Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I want to start by saying happy Valentine's Day to you. And it is so great to have you here today. I have notes that I use right now and I've lost them. Oh, wait, here we go. I know that Foresight Play is not a place for everybody, but you are here because you care about senior living. And that's really what we're going to talk about today is what makes for great senior living, how to help families have better lives. And so if you are committed to that, if you're committed to making it better, this is the place for you. We would love to actually hear back from you about what you're doing to improve the lives of residents, team members, and families. Maybe you have a story. Maybe you should be on Foresight TV with me or in Tech Tuesday. And then we'd also love to hear if there are things we should be talking about that we're not, so we can serve you better. In addition to Foresight TV, we produce all kinds of great leadership content. We have a number of LinkedIn posts pretty much every day. We have the Foresight podcast, we have Tech Tuesday, another live stream. The most impactful thing we do is the Foresight website, where we publish new leadership content every day. It's free. It's easy to subscribe to. You can see the QR code up on the screen. There's a link in the chat. Just click on that, put your email address in, your name, and I think we ask for a little bit more information, and that you are good to go. It will improve your business. The last thing I want to talk about is we have just announced this week a brand new supplier directory that you can find on the Foresight website. And you can go there if you're looking for a new service, if you're looking for new products, you're looking for help with something, you go in there to the directory, you do a search. There are a bunch of categories. It's easy to use. If you are a vendor company and you want to have more exposure, you can actually sign up for free. Won't help you a lot, but it is free. And you can get your name up there, or we have very modest priced premium packages where you'll actually get your name out in front of senior living operators a number of times a year for a very, very modest price. And again, you can see the QR code up there. There's a link in the directory. So we'd love to have you check that out. And with that, let's get started with our conversation. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Mark, Maureen, welcome. Seems like I just saw you guys in person not that long ago. They actually invited me to deliver their closing keynote for the first national, help me out.
National Placement Referral Alliance.
National Placement Referral Alliance, their local chapter here in the Sacramento area. I got to do the privilege of doing their closing keynote. What an amazing group of people who care so much about older people, the families, and making lives better. But let's start with you, Maureen, and I'd like to have you talk a little bit about who you are, what you do. We're going to start by saying you help people families find the right senior living opportunity for their loved one and their families, right?
Yes, that's correct. Before I came into this industry, I really had no idea that people like placement agents existed. I went through helping my uncle in his Parkinson's journey, and it was not a good outcome with his caregiver. He ended up with pressure wounds and then sepsis, and she stole a bunch of money from him. And that kind of made me aware of how seniors really need some type of an advocate and people with knowledge and people who are ethical. So when I entered this industry, I consider myself an advocate and a guide for families. Sometimes families will come to me in a crisis situation where they need placement immediately. They need to find the right and appropriate either boarding care home or assisted living or memory care. Other people are just starting to notice changes in their loved one, and they're looking for some type of support. So I am an expert in my market. I take quite a bit of time with discovery with the family so that I can make sure I do an appropriate placement, not just for their physical care needs, but their mental, emotional, and spiritual as well.
Terrific. I love that. It's a very, very complex. It's a really, it's really tough. And I've written quite a bit about my experiences as a senior living consumer and how hard it's been for me as somebody who at least thinks of himself as an expert. But when you're in it, it's really, really tough. So, Mark, you do the same thing. Maybe talk a little bit about what you do, and also if you can touch a little bit about the association and what makes it so unique.
Sure thing. Well, and happy Valentine's Day to you, Steve. Also,
thank you,
and everybody else out there. Back in the early 2000s, I was a financial advisor, and I used to talk to all of my clients about preparing for the high probability of needing to pay for a long-term care expense. And, I have long-term care insurance, because I was an advisor, right? My mom had long-term care insurance. My wife has it. And I used to talk to all my clients about it. And so I thought I was an expert on how to pay for a long-term care expense. One day I get a call from my mom telling me that she has Alzheimer's. And over the next couple of years, I realized that it's not just about the money and being able to financially be prepared, but it was about all those other things I knew nothing about. All the hard decisions that would have to be made for someone that actually had Alzheimer's. How long can they stay in their home? When do you move someone out of their home? What kind of care do they need? Is it assisted living or memory care? And then all the emotional decisions too. I wasn't prepared for that. And so I remember asking myself, wouldn't it be nice if there was a Alzheimer's advocate or somebody I could hire to help me through all those really hard decisions? And so fast forward about 10 years, and my mom passed away in 2011. In 2017, my wife and I decided to move our family to the Sacramento area. And we were going to start a new business. And so that process of looking for a new business made me realize that there is an industry for all those things that I wished I had way back then. It's the senior placement industry. And so we ended up buying a senior care authority franchise, and we've been doing that ever since. Since 2017, we've helped over 450 families find assisted living, memory care, or even independent living. And very similar to Maureen, what she does, we're a small sort of boutique-like, high-touch, in-person service that does everything for the clients.
So let's talk about, Maureen, and maybe I'll ask you this at least to start, is everybody who's a senior living operator knows about the large online lead aggregators, a place for mom dominating that position. I think it would be fair to say that while there are some senior living organizations that are pretty dependent on them, I don't think anybody's in love with them, mostly because of the amount of money they have to pay to get those leads. What makes you different?
Well, what makes us different is that we have boots on the ground. And so I have toured all the communities and boarding care homes, which are smaller 6-bed homes here in California. I have toured all of those. I also own a senior care authority franchise. So Mark and I have separate territories. So I've toured those. I keep up on citations and complaints. Beyond that, I have relationships with the marketing directors and the care homeowners. And I know what the right fit is going to be. If somebody has dementia, but they're early in their journey and they still want to engage, I know which homes have the more alert and cognitively higher functioning residents. So I'm not going to place somebody who has who's higher functioning with residents who are further along in their journey. Whereas some of the online companies, is it spray and pray? I think they use that term. And it's just, they just broadcast a family's information out. So the family is getting inundated with calls. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know if this is the right fit. And, I think also the communities and the care homes appreciate when we have kind of filtered out the appropriate needs, and when we can share that with them, and we're not just bringing anyone to them, that it's not even an appropriate fit.
So a number of months ago, I'm thinking probably 6 or 7 months ago now, I realized that I'd never, if you will, mystery shopped a place for mom. And so I called them, and I was actually moderately impressed. I feel like they did a pretty decent job of discovery and trying to understand. And I used my stepfather as sort of the model for what I was looking for, not actually thinking I was going to need senior living. But I have to tell you that I almost regret it today, because I still get these calls. In fact, at least once a month, my mobile phone will ring, and I'll look at it, and it'll say a place for mom there. And of course, I just hit the disconnect button and don't talk to them. And I've told them that we've already made a decision. And fortunately, most of the senior living communities that we're calling, I've let them know that we figured out what we're going to do, and they've quit calling. But it's very persistent. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would say that to me, the main difference between what individuals like Maureen and I do for our clients and what a large lead aggregator does is that it really comes down to a capacity thing. If I were to just be shooting out lists to people and saying, here's 10 or 20 places that are in your zip code, call them, and then share the client's information with all those places, I could do that. I have unlimited capacity to do that, because like Maureen and I both know our territories. We know all the care providers, but we don't do that. We spend a lot of time with our clients. We do an enormous amount of research. Well, first of all, we talk to our clients for a long time to understand their loved ones' care needs, emotional needs, all the things about them that you would want to know if you were going to do a quality placement. But then we get in the car with them and we go look at all those options. So we're spending 10, 20 hours with a client. So we don't have the capacity to work with a lot of people. That's the main difference.
Yeah, I really like that. So I'm going to actually, if you'll allow me, I want to grab just a little piece of my that I read, that I talked about at the keynote, because I think it really encapsulates what you do. And this is something that I used in my keynote, but originally it came from my journal when I was looking for care for my dad. And so here's what I wrote. It's 10:30 Friday morning. I'm on my 4th day of COVID. My 91-year-old stepfather is on his 6th day of COVID in the hospital. The hospital wants him out. He wants out. I can't figure it out. I want to cry. They are planning on sending him to a nursing home today or tomorrow, and that horrifies me. I need somebody to tell me what to do, to show me a way. I am the expert, so I thought. I am so in over my head. I'm overwhelmed with the guilt. I was in tears. I just did not know what to do. I can't imagine. And yet that's what you guys do, right? Is you solve that problem.
We do. I mean, I think that also there's so many factors that need to be taken into consideration, such as the acuity of the patient, the whether that patient or a prospective resident needs a wake staff. And, there are things that have to, a lot of questions that have to be asked and answered before the right fit can be found. And, one other thing that I wanted to say about the online aggregate companies out there is that I don't think families realize that when they are giving their information, they're agreeing to kind of be owned as a lead by those companies. So let's say their information was sent out to a community, but then they find me and I want to take them to the same community, but I've done so much more work with them and I'm showing them other places. Well, there's no family choice. They're not allowed to say to those companies, well, I'd rather work with Maureen or Mark. They're actually touring with me. They're guiding me. So that's another challenge for us.
Yeah, so I completely agree. This is actually my biggest complaint about the online aggregators, is that when a prospect puts their information into the form, or they pick up the phone and they dial the phone, they become a party to a contract that they did not really that they certainly didn't understand what they were going to become. They become the product, right? And they don't really understand they become the product. And there needs to be a way out when somebody's working with people who are like you, who are feet on the ground. So I absolutely agree with that. So as you know, my primary audience are senior living owners and operators and investors. I'd like to shift the discussion just a little bit to better understand how they can work with your. I mean, everybody sort of knows they get inundated with calls from a place for mom if they don't already have a contract, but they may not even know about you. How do they work with you and or the equivalent of you in their local marketplace? How do they find you? How do they make it easy for you to do your job, to do placements? Mark, let's start with you and then go back to Maureen.
Well, you mentioned earlier the association.
Yes.
And I would say maybe what some of those senior living communities, owners, operators should do is check out the NPRA, because it's going to give them high quality agents to work with. In fact, there's a directory there. You can put in a zip code or a city on the website for it's npralliance.org, and you're going to get names of all the NPRA agents in your area. And the reason that we started our chapter in the Sacramento area is because in California, and that's where Maureen and I are, so we focus on California. It's a crazy place. It's the wild, wild west for assisted living. There are literally no rules, no regulations, no guidelines for how to do our job. And so that's why we started this chapter back in 2019, because we wanted to be able to tell our clients that we follow a set of best practices and a code of ethics. And NPRA has spent years creating a set of best practices and code of ethics, debating it, going back and forth to try to figure out how to represent the industry correctly. And when we started in 2019, there was like 4 or 5 chapters. Now there's 20 all across the country, and there's 20 more under formation. So we're growing like crazy.
That I love that. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about sort of the code of ethics and just some of the things that are in it?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, the best practices and code of ethics, but just to give you a couple quick examples, and there's like 10 or 15 of them, but one of the best practices says that we should tour with our clients, and not just tour with our clients, but we should show them more than one option. So what I do, and I think what Maureen does, and many of our colleagues, is we show at least 3 or 4 different places, and we go in person with them. We have to disclose who our affiliations are. So if I own a care home or part of a care home, I need to tell my client, if I'm showing them something that I own, and we have to tell them how we get paid. We have to research the background of the facilities. We look in the Department of Social Services website for citations and complaints, and we have to report that to our clients. We have to have liability insurance. So that's just a handful of the best practices. But from an ethical standpoint, we have to be knowledgeable about state laws and regulations. For example, if we have a client who's bedridden, you can't put them in a facility that doesn't have a waiver for bedridden clients. The fire department has to clear them to declare that it's safe for a bedridden person to be there. we have to be confidential with client information. So we don't spray our client information out to everyone. And, you know, we don't have any sort of hidden disclosure documents that you know, clients can't see and then share their information. We only share their information with the places that we actually visit with the client. And we can't churn our clients. You know, it's an old financial term, churning, but that just means placing someone over and over again for financial gain.
Yeah. So one of the other things, Maureen, that I think is so important that goes hand in hand with this is that you actually know which are good buildings and which are good communities and bad communities, right? Because I have done a nursing home placement and an assisted living placement with loved ones who frankly had really, really good sort of Google reviews, or in the case of a nursing home, they were a 5-star nursing home. And when I got my loved ones in there, they were terrible. And so if you don't have an expert, how do you figure this out, right? So talk to me a little bit about how you think about quality in the communities that you visit and recommend.
Well, I'd say one of the most important things is the longevity of the staff, as well as the executive director and the marketing directors. If you see a lot of caregiver turnover, that's usually an indication that there's just something not right with the company, whether it's the culture or the executive director. If you're seeing executive directors changing over and over again, that's another sign that there's just something not right with the community. And it really, for some reason, got worse after COVID. And Mark and I kind of joke about it. It's like trying to keep up our database with the most recent contacts is sometimes a challenge. So I think having that longevity with the staff, that's an indication it's a good community. Something with low citations or no citations and complaints. I always stay in contact with, when I have done a placement, I've always stayed in contact with my families. I'm in contact a lot right after the placement for the first month. And then I stay in contact for 6 months. And I really want feedback from them. And that's helped me, you know, I want to make sure that promises made are promises kept. And then the relationships that I build with the marketing directors and sales directors is really important, as well as the memory care directors. They just, I know who I can trust, and that what they're saying is genuine, and it's not just verbiage that they're giving me so that they can fill a bed or fill a room or fill an apartment. And then I would also say that going into a community or a care home and watching how the caregivers or the staff interact with residents. What do the residents look like? Are they engaged? Or do they seem happy? For care homes, especially, like, what does it, is it clean? Not just clean, but also things like, is there fresh paint on the walls? Is the carpet up to date? Just where it would be a home that you would feel comfortable putting your loved one in. So I'd say that those are the main things for me.
Cool. So Mark, here's my question. You guys get to go into a lot of communities, and some of you, I'm sure you like better than others. And I'm sure that as you go through this process, you end up walking out at least some of the time and going, if only they would. So my question really is this: what would make senior living better? And I'm going to leave it that broad because I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, Maureen just listed a whole bunch of things that I would agree with. To me, when I have a client with me, we're going to walk into a building, or in California, we have a lot of what are called boarding care homes. And so, we do a lot of work with these smaller residential type places. So the first thing I would say is we walk in and the administrator or the owner is not there. And they didn't think to tell us about that. And now the person who's touring us is someone who really can't answer the difficult questions. So my client's never going to choose that place, right? And another thing is when we walk into a smaller place, a boarding care home, and the caregivers are on their phones in the corner and they're not paying attention to the residents. They're not sitting down playing cards with the residents or interacting with them. That's a big turnoff to our clients. So little things like that, you would think that they, if we're coming with our clients, that they would be, at least faking it.
Yeah.
In the large communities, the marketing director should do the tour. We're just there to supplement them because our client wants to hear them talk. And if they have a great personality and they're super engaging and they really know their stuff, there's a really high probability our client is going to feel good about that community.
Terrific. I love that. That's such great advice. One of the questions that occurs to me as we're talking is that it sounds like both of you have kind of a bias in favor of the smaller homes. Can you just talk a little bit about that, Maureen? I'll start with you. You can even challenge me if that's not true. That's just sort of my sense.
Well, it really depends on our client, but I tend to work with a lot of dementia clients, and a lot of times I think that the boarding care homes are a good fit because they need a quieter environment, a smaller environment. Or if they're a high fall risk, and there are a lot of my clients are high fall risk, then a smaller environment where there's 2 caregivers for 6 residents is going to be much better because there's more eyes on them. So I feel like there's just that extra touch. With the larger memory cares, those provide a great opportunity or service for people who may have expressions or a lot of sundowning or things like that. And I do like the larger communities for people who are still looking for activities and things like that. But the majority of my placement, I think, is in the boarding care homes for those reasons.
And Steve, can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
I think that we're really fortunate here, at least in Northern California. I think Southern California is the same way. But we have lots of these smaller communities, and we have a lot of larger ones. And we have a lot of diversity. We have large communities that are only memory care communities that just specialize in memory care. So there's a lot to choose from. Other parts of the country aren't so lucky. New York, for example, I heard it's all big communities and it's 20,000 or more a month. But it puts us in a unique position of being able to talk to the client about their loved one and what their needs are. And what a lot of it comes down to is staffing, caregiver to resident ratio. And, in a small care home, they're usually licensed for 6 people here in California. And so if you have 2 caregivers, that's almost 1-to-1 ratio. It's 1-to-3, but it's pretty close. In a large community, it might be 1-to-15 in assisted living. And in memory care, it could be twice that. But it's still, 1-to-8, 1-to-7. And so if someone's a fall risk, then, maybe they should consider a smaller community where the closest caregiver is 20 feet away, and they can hear what you're doing in the other room. So it gives us a really good opportunity to be matchmaker, if you will.
Yeah, I find myself, I sort of know, and I probably should spend more time thinking about this, but it puzzles me that sort of large enterprise senior living has not been able to sort of figure out how to create that more intimate level of staffing that takes place in the smaller homes. Because it seems like they have lots of resources and so it almost should be easier to do. But in fact, the opposite is true, that it seems very, very difficult to do. So I don't really know. I have sort of one more quick question for you. And we've sort of touched on all of this already, but I think it's worth talking about very specifically. And that's that you both do follow-ups with families after you've made placements. And I'd just love to hear kind of the things that maybe we ought to do. Let's do it both positive and negative. What are the things that you hear that are positive, and what are the things that you hear that could be done better? And Maureen, we'll start with you.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, the positive is that it's taken the burden off the family, and they can go back to being the wife or the child. They feel like their loved one, their family member, is well taken care of, is eating better, and just has those eyes on them that they need. Or maybe they're in a larger community, no dementia, but assisted living, and they're getting that socialization that they didn't have before. Negative has been promises made and promises not kept, where they said that there was going to be a certain amount of staffing and it wasn't there, or the food isn't what they thought it would be. The food isn't good. And then I've had some family members where their expectations are really, really high. And I think what they expected was different than what the community could provide, but there was maybe a miscommunication. That doesn't happen often, but I've had 2 incidences where that has occurred.
Cool. No, that's super helpful. Mark, anything else that you would add to that, positive and negative?
The positive is that, when someone places their loved one and they no longer have to do the heavy, caregiving, they can go spend time with them, and it's quality time. And you're the son again. I think Maureen mentioned this. You're the son again, or the daughter again, and you don't have to worry about changing their briefs. The negative, I would say, I call it being boiled and squeezed. My wife and I had kind of joke around with this. The old story of how you boil a frog. You put them in a lukewarm pot, and you slowly turn up the temperature, and they don't realize what's happening. And the same thing happens to people when they place their loved one. And it's not always the community's fault, because prices have gone up. COVID, inflation, all those things cause prices to go way up, and people go in with a budget, and then prices go up, and then they have problems. But what I see a lot is these communities will lower their rates to lure someone in with a low rate, and then they'll increase the rates at a higher rate than they normally would. And now the family feels the squeeze. And they don't know if they should move their loved one. They may not be able to, because they had a budget, and the whole market has passed them by right now. And so that's a complicated issue, but I'm talking to people a lot about that right now.
Yeah, it's I know that costs are really a huge issue, and of course, primarily because of labor, but to some degree even food costs, right? The cost for operators has gone up faster than inflation, and I think that will continue to happen because we've got more people who are needing care and fewer caregivers. So. Mark, Maureen, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for inviting me to come speak a couple of weeks ago. A great conversation today. Great experience to hang out with you for the day. I appreciate your passion for making a difference in families, for changing the world for those families in very meaningful, real ways. And so I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.